Okay, dear students, good evening. Today once again just we are returning to the topic. हम लोग फिर एक बार अपने मुद्दे पर लौटते हैं. First of all, I have to give you a reminder. You have to go through the history of modern India, and for the sake of convenience, better to divide them in 4 parts. I have divided them into 4 parts. The first part is the history of 18th century, मतलब 18वीं सदी का इतिहास. Second part is the history of colonialism, उपनिवेशवाद का इतिहास. The part third is nationalism, राष्ट्रवाद का इतिहास. And part fourth is post-independence era, and that is स्वतंत्रता के उपरांत का भारत. My students, we have successfully finished the topic like history of 18th century. हम लोगों ने अच्छे ढंग से history of 18th century को पूरा किया. Then we have entered into the topic of colonialism, and this topic of colonialism had to be subdivided into 3 subparts. The history of mercantile phase of colonialism, मतलब उपनिवेशवाद का वाणिज्यिक चरण, इंडस्ट्रियल फेज ऑफ colonialism, उपनिवेशवाद का औद्योगिक चरण, and finally the financial phase of colonialism, उपनिवेशवाद का वित्तीय चरण. So my students, we have finished the mercantile phase and industrial phase, and now we have entered into, we are going across the subtopic that is financial phase. So first of all, you know कि whenever we start a class, I am posing 5 questions to you people, and you people are smart enough to answer my question, and that is actually that gives me an added strength and inspiration to work with you. Because even the questions are going to be a bit tricky, but you people are just solving the questions so easily. Sometimes it is, I am going to be much enthusiastic for this sort of experiment, you know. मतलब आप लोग बड़ी आसानी से उन 5 क्वेश्चंस को सॉल्व कर रहे हो जो डिफिकल्ट हैं. अब जस्ट आई एम स्टार्टिंग विद द फर्स्ट वन क्वेश्चन. गो थ्रू. ड्यूरिंग टेन्योर ऑफ व्हिच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग वाइसरायज द रॉयल टाइटल एक्ट वाज पास्ड एंड Queen Victoria was given the title of Kaisar-e-Hind. Royal Title Act means राजकीय उपाधि अधिनियम. And here you have to find out which of the Governor Generals took the initiative for enforcement of this act, which led to the empowerment of the position of Queen Victoria, and on whose basis Queen Victoria just, you can say, turned from the impress in India to impress of India. Impress in India to impress of India. What does it mean? It means कि भारत में साम्राज्ञी से भारत की साम्राज्ञी. Just what choices are there? Choice A Canning, choice B Lytton, choice C Ripon, choice D Curzon. Be fast, my students. Lytton. Yes. This question is relatively easy for you. Question number 2. Which of the following viceroys followed a policy to patronize? Please erase the D. That is a printing mistake. To patronize. Which of the following viceroys followed a policy to patronize the Indian rulers as the leaders of masses in India? Choice A Canning, choice B Lytton, choice C Curzon, and choice D Dufferin. And Canning, Lytton, Curzon and Dufferin. Be fast. मतलब आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा जा रहा है कि कौन सा ऐसा वायसराय है जिसने इंडियन रूलर्स को इस आधार पर संरक्षण दिया, पैट्रोनाइज किया कि इंडियन लीडर्स आर द नेचुरल लीडर्स ऑफ द पीपल. दे आर द लीडर्स ऑफ द मासेस. मीन्स कि द नेचुरल लीडर्स ऑफ द पीपल, जो भारतीय शासक हैं, इंडियन लीडर्स, इंडियन प्रिंसेस, इंडियन किंग्स आर द नेचुरल लीडर्स ऑफ द पीपल. Choice number A Canning. Yes. Assertion A. Queen Victoria's proclamation assured fair treatment with the princely states. And Queen Victoria की जो उद्घोषणा है, proclamation means उद्घोषणा, that tried to establish that कि जो यहाँ के शासक हैं उनके साथ बड़ा उचित व्यवहार किया जाएगा. मतलब Queen Victoria's proclamation assured fair treatment with the princely states, reasoning The British Crown intended to develop India as Commonwealth on similar model as South Africa and Australia. मतलब रीजनिंग में दिया हुआ है कि ब्रिटिश चाहते थे कि इंडिया को हम ऐसे ही एक कॉमनवेल्थ बना दें जैसा कि उस समय अफ्रीका और ऑस्ट्रेलिया ब्रिटिश कॉमनवेल्थ कहलाता था। तो उनका मकसद इसको कॉमनवेल्थ बनाना था। तो क्या इन दोनों के बीच सिमिलरिटी है? क्या यह इसका लॉजिकल एक्सप्लेनेशन है? या आपको यू हैव टू फाइंड आउट वेदर आर इज द प्रॉपर एक्सप्लेनेशन फॉर ए or not. So choices are here. There are the 4 choices A, B, C, D. You people are just free to choose one of them. Move on. Yes, correct. All the 3 questions are correct, guys. All the 3 questions are correct. Question number 4. Consider the following statements. 1. Warren Hastings was the first Governor General who introduced a modern police system बेस्ड ऑन द ब्रिटिश मॉडल इन इंडिया। मतलब उसने एक मॉडर्न पुलिस सिस्टम स्टेब्लिश किया जो ब्रिटिश मॉडल पर था। कौन? तो वारेन हेस्टिंग्स। पॉइंट 2, द सुप्रीम कोर्ट वाज एस्टेब्लिश्ड इन कलकत्ता थ्रू द रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट 1773। थ्रू द रेगुलेटिंग एक्ट ऑफ एक्ट 1773। थर्ड, द इंडियन पेनल कोड केम इनटू फोर्स इन 1860। मतलब जो इंडियन, जिसको भारतीय दंड संहिता कहते हैं, दैट केम इनटू 1860। Indian Penal Code came in force in 1860. Which of the above statements are correct? Choice A 1 and 2, B 2 and 3, C 1 and 3, and D 1, 2 and 3. Be fast. No, my student said the point is B is the correct answer. Actually, which of the Governor Generals should be given the credit to have introduced the police system, modern police system in India? So this Governor General is not Warren Hastings, rather it was Lord Cornwallis. My students, you might have selected the name Lord Cornwallis. So that's why you have to drop the choice number 1 and 2 and 3. These 2 and 3 are the correct answer. Question number 5. During the 19th century, growing size of population resulted in excessive burden on land because, मतलब आपसे पूछा जा रहा है कि 19th सेंचुरी में जो पॉपुलेशन का ज्यादा ग्रोथ था, that resulted in excessive burden on land, उस कारण से लैंड पर, मतलब in 19th century the larger part of Indian population, there was the heavy burden of peasants on land because, choice A, due to introduction of cash crops, the peasants were naturally attracted towards agriculture. B, due to decline of handicrafts industries, people turned towards agriculture. मतलब पहला चॉइस ये दे रहा है कि चूंकि कैश क्रॉप्स आया, उस कैश क्रॉप्स के आने से पीजेंट्स, मतलब ये आपसे पूछा जा रहा है कि 19th सेंचुरी में एग्रीकल्चर में लोगों का, मतलब एग्रीकल्चर पर बर्डन बढ़ा। चॉइस नंबर ए, ड्यू टू इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ कैश क्रॉप द पीजेंट्स वेर नेचुरली अट्रैक्टेड टुवर्ड्स एग्रीकल्चर, मैंने कैश क्रॉप्स की खेती हुई इसलिए लोग एग्रीकल्चर की तरफ अट्रैक्ट हुए। चॉइस बी, ड्यू टू डिक्लाइन ऑफ हैंडीक्राफ्ट इंडस्ट्रीज पीपुल टर्न टुवर्ड्स एग्रीकल्चर, क्योंकि अब हस्त शिल्पों का पतन हो गया था, दस्तकारी का, हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स का, इसलिए लोग एग्रीकल्चर की तरफ मुड़े। सी, ड्यू टू डिक्लाइन ऑफ नेटिव रूलर्स देयर वाज डिक्लाइन इन एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज। ड्यू टू द डिक्लाइन ऑफ नेटिव रूलर्स, जो देशी शासक है उनका पतन हुआ तो एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज बढ़ी। एंड डी, ड्यू टू सिक्योरिटी रीजन्स अर्बन पॉपुलेशन माइग्रेटेड इन लार्ज नंबर्स टुवर्ड्स रूरल एरियाज, मतलब कुछ सुरक्षा कारणों से लोग नगरीय क्षेत्र से ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में गए। ये 4 चॉइस आपको हैं, यू हैव टू फाइंड आउट। बी फास्ट, बी फास्ट माय फ्रेंड्स, टुडे दे आर गोइंग वेरी स्लो। अंकुर, चॉइस बी इज द करेक्ट आंसर। यस, यू आर करेक्ट। 5 to 5 questions correct. Now my students, a question arises. Yesterday I have given to some homework, and what is the homework? Here I have to make you clear. This is your, this one. Mr. Ankur, I have given them some question. Firstly, I am making you clear about the question. Just 1 minute. Question is, the proclamation of Queen Victoria on 1st November 1858 about Indian states changed the basis of the relationship between the British Crown and Indian states completely, critically examined. मतलब आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा जा रहा कि इनफैक्ट द प्रोक्लेमेशन ऑफ क्वीन विक्टोरिया ऑन 1 नवंबर 1858, मतलब 1 नवंबर 1858 को जो क्वीन विक्टोरिया का जो घोषणा आई थी उसने भारतीय राज्य और ब्रिटिश एम्पायर मतलब इंडियन स्टेट्स और ब्रिटिश क्राउन ब्रिटिश किंग दोनों के रिलेशन को कंप्लीटली चेंज कर दिया, ये आपको बताना है। और टर्म है क्रिटिकली एग्जाम स्टडी। आई हैव टोल्ड यू, I have inquired from you and you people have very enthusiastically answered my question. This is an argumentative question and you also promised yesterday you people will take initiative in answering the question. Mr. Ankur, ask my students what is their situation. Have they tried the question? Have they tried the question? Please, my students, be fast and answer my question. Have you tried the question? Okay. अब सपोज हाउ टू राइट द क्वेश्चन, आई एम गिविंग यू सम आइडिया। मैं आपको थोड़ा सा आइडिया देता हूं, जैसे आंसर इन द कैसे हाँ in 1858 in 1858 Queen's proclamation very tactfully change the behavior of British Crown towards Indian states, but objective and basis of relations remain to be the same. My students here inform that 1858 में जो क्वीन की का जो प्रोक्लेमेशन आई थी, घोषणा आई थी, उसने ब्रिटिश क्राउन के व्यवहार को तो बदल दिया लेकिन संबंधों का पुराना आधार ही बना रहा। मतलब द स्टेट रिमेन टू बी एक्सप्लॉइटेटिव टुवर्ड्स इंडियन स्टेट्स, इट डिडंट डिस्कार्ड द ओल्ड पॉलिसी ऑफ एक्सप्लॉइटेशन, मतलब पहले की पॉलिसी को इसने परित्याग नहीं किया। एंड देन विद द चेंज, दिस इज योर थेसिस मींस यू हैव टेकन द स्टैंड। Question is argumentative, you have already taken the stand, then you can mention further. I am just giving you the instruction. In place of the direct control on the Indian states, the British Crown, while taking the lesson from the Great Revolt of 1857, the Crown preferred to maintain that indirect control on the Indian states. मतलब भारतीय राज्यों पर प्रत्यक्ष नियंत्रण के बजाय जो ब्रिटिश क्राउन है उसने अप्रत्यक्ष नियंत्रण बनाए रखना पसंद किया। That's okay. and then with the change of paragraph you will present certain examples, the 3 examples I have given to you, and in the last you will give the conclusion. That is your model answer. My students, are you clear? Anywhere you find difficulty, I am here to help you and you can ask me the question. अगर कहीं भी आपको दिक्कत लगे तो हमसे आप आंसर पूछ सकते हो. Anyway, so both multiple choice question and long question are over, and now I am returning to the topic again. So please come to the topic. Yesterday we people were just making a diagram. You can recall here, this diagram here. I have told you in fact Lord Mayo, yesterday in the administration I have made you clear. Actually, basically we have focused over administrative and financial decentralization, and this process of decentralization started in 1861. मतलब आपको ये सूचना मिलती है कि जो प्रशासनिक विकेंद्रीकरण है वो 1861 में प्रारंभ हुआ था, and it reached up to its logical culmination in the Indian Council Bill of 1919. लेकिन जो इंडियन काउंसिल बिल ऑफ 1919 है वहां पर ये लॉजिकल कल्मिनेशन में पहुंचा, बिकॉज हियर यू कम टू नो इट वाज इन 1919 देयर वाज द क्रिएशन ऑफ 3 डिफरेंट लिस्ट, सेंट्रल लिस्ट, स्टेट लिस्ट एंड डिवाइडेड लिस्ट. बट आई विल मेंशन अबाउट दैट व्हेनेवर आई विल टीच यू द इंडियन काउंसिल बिल ऑफ 1919. So that's the point. And then what is financial devolution? In yesterday's class I have made you clear. Actually the financial devolution means now there was decentralization of taxation system. Decentralization of taxation system means now the central government devolved some right to impose the tax even on the states. मतलब कि अब वित्तीय विकेंद्रीकरण हुआ और केंद्रीय सरकार ने राज्य सरकार को भी कुछ कर वसूलने का दायित्व दिया, कुछ टैक्स वसूल करने का दायित्व प्रदान किया. एंड दिस प्रोसेस वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय अ गवर्नर जनरल हुज नेम वाज लॉर्ड मेयो in 1870 onwards. So my students, this point may be and must be clear to you. Okay Ankur, all are okay? Fully, my students, actually you are well aware of the example. Possibly you are getting confused. जैसे मैंने आपको लिखवाया, जैसे क्वेश्चन सबसे बड़ी बात होती है क्वेश्चन स्टार्ट करना. अगर पूरा का पूरा आंसर मैं यहाँ डिक्टेट करूंगा तो अपने पास टाइम की कमी होती है, तुम जानते हो. वी आर हैविंग द डेर्थ ऑफ टाइम. इफ आई एम गोइंग टू डिक्टेट द होल ऑफ द आंसर, इट विल कंज्यूम माय होल टाइम एंड आई विल नॉट कैरी द सिलेबस फर्दर. सो माय स्टूडेंट्स, दैट्स व्हाई आई एम गिविंग अ मॉडल डायरेक्शन, एंड इन सम क्वेश्चंस आई एम गिविंग यू द मॉडल आंसर माई सेल्फ. Even today I have discussed the model answer, and there I am giving in the written form. If I am going to dictate whole of the answer, so that will very time consuming for us, you know. मैंने हम लोगों के लिए बहुत कॉस्टली हो जाएगा, आप तो जानते ही हो, क्योंकि हमारे पास तो टाइम बेसिकली हम 1.5 hour का क्लास आपको लेते, बिकॉज एक्चुअली आई हैव टू मेंटेन बोथ द मीडियम साइमल्टेनियसली. सो आई एम एलोकेटेड 1.5 hour टू यू पीपल एंड 1 hour 15 minutes टू हिंदी मीडियम. So in this way we are just moving further. So that's why my students, once again I am repeating you for your convenience. Actually there is the question, the proclamation of Queen Victoria on 1st November 1858 changed the basis of relationship between the British Crown, changed the basis of fundamental basis of the relations, or the basis of the relations between the British Crown and Indian states. Critically examine the statement. So my students, this question is argumentative, and this question is putting a question mark to the veracity of the statement. मतलब ये क्वेश्चन आपको हिंट कर रहा है कि देखिए आप डिसएग्री करिए, आप एग्री मत करिएगा इसके साथ. ये बोल रहा है कि दोनों के संबंधों का आधार बदल गया. भाई आधार कैसे बदल जाएगा? हाउ द बेस इज गोइंग टू बी अल्टर्ड, बिकॉज यू नो even after 1858 the British Crown continued the exploitation of Indian resources. The British Crown continuously subjugating and you can say suppressing the Indian states. In actual sense the status of Indian states declined vis-a-vis the British Crown. So how can we make this accept this statement if the basis of the relationship changed? तो हमें उसे डिसएग्री करना है, बताना है कि देखिए बेसिस ऑफ रिलेशनशिप चेंज नहीं हुआ है, केवल व्यवहार चेंज हो गया है. मतलब नाउ यू कैन से British Crown sweetened its behavior towards the इंडियन स्टेट्स, माने उन्होंने अपने व्यवहार को में थोड़ा मिठास ला दिया है और फंडामेंटल कोई चेंज नहीं किया है। यही आपका स्टैंड वहां होना है। तो माय स्टूडेंट्स, हियर आई हैव मेड दिस पॉइंट क्लियर कि एक्चुअली simply they change the behavior, not the nature of the relationship, and in place of direct control, they prefer the indirect control. And there are the 3 points. One point is the Royal Title Act, how she became the Empress of India, how was the convening of Delhi Darbar, how did the Indian rulers participate there as the feudal lords or feudatories, like Samant की तरह कैसे उन्होंने भाग लिया. Then point number 2, how through the kings and princes the British Crown preferred to have the influence and control over their people. And the third one part, how the Indian states were integrated with the British Crown on the basis of modern line of transport and communication. There you will give the examples of modern railways and telegraph. तो हमने तो आपको पिछले क्लास में ये तीनों का तीनों पॉइंट दिया हुआ है. Then what difficulty, Mr. Ankur? Are they okay? Legislative decentralization का मीन्स हुआ कि लॉ मेकिंग, द पावर ऑफ लॉ मेकिंग वाज अर्लियर एक्वायर्ड बाय द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट on the basis of Charter Act of 1833. The Governor General in Council, you can say, usurped the right of law making from Madras and Bombay Presidency. So that's why I have told you earlier, it is due to the fact that Governor General of Bengal came to be known as Governor General of India, because now Bengal was enjoying the law making power for Madras and Bombay as well. But my students, in 1861, the powers were returned to Madras and Bombay. Madras and Bombay, and then Madras and Bombay chose to make the laws for themselves. So it is the process of decentralization, legislative decentralization. Law making could have been done at local level, and the central government was not given the sole right. Central government was making the laws in its own spheres, and states were making the laws in their own spheres. In this way, you can say the sphere of law making was divided between the two. So it was the decentralization of power. In the same way, financial decentralization or devolution means that earlier the central government was imposing all sorts of taxes, but at least the central government now devolved certain tax collection to the state government as well. तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को भी थोड़ा सा कलेक्शन, टैक्स को कलेक्शन का राइट दिया, अधिकार दिया. तो वही दोनों है. अब नाउ my students, up other reforms, one reforms was the army reforms. What is the army reforms or military reforms, you can say? So in fact, the Great Revolt of 1857 proved a great game changer, because in course of the 1857 revolt, I will discuss with you later. I have not so far covered this topic. I will cover this topic in the nationalism part 3rd. So when the Great Revolt of 1857 occurred, so it was bitterly realized it was the largest military revolt in the world against any colonial power, and 1,20,000 soldiers of Bengal, or you can say 1,20,000 soldiers from the Bengal army, they just directed their guns against their own master. मतलब 1,20,000 सैनिक विद्रोह में खड़े थे. So it created panicky among the British. So British modified its military policy. One of the measures was that earlier there was the dominance of much dominance of Indian elements in the army, and there was mismatch between the Indian army and Indian soldiers and European British soldiers. Their proportion was something between 2 and 1. So this proportion was slightly improved through 3 proportion to 3 ratio 2. So in this way, you can say that slightly the ratio was improved. That British and Europeans could have gotten more representation in soldiery. That is the one point. Second one point was artillery department was a very important department. Artillery means तोपखाना विभाग. तो तोपखाना विभाग बहुत महत्वपूर्ण विभाग था. So it was exclusively placed under the control of the British or European officers, not under Indian officers. Second, it was the second one. Third one, particularly the British followed the policy of discouraging appointment from northern Bihar and eastern UP, which was politically conscious region. पॉलिटिकली कॉन्शियस रीजन। तो मतलब ये कहा गया कि जो क्षेत्र राजनीतिक रूप से ज्यादा सजग हो वहां से आर्मी का अपॉइंटमेंट मत करिए। एंड द नेक्स्ट वन वाज कि दे इंट्रोड्यूस द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ अ मार्शल रेस। मार्शल रेस का मतलब है वॉरिंग रेस, फाइटिंग रेस और लड़ाकू जाति। एंड गोरखा एंड सिख्स वर डिक्लेयर्ड टू बी the people, the soldiers from the martial race, and they were given priority in the appointment of in the appointment of the soldiers. So in this way you can say the role of Bihar and UP was undermined, and the role of the Punjab and Nepal, Gorkha regiment and Sikh regiment, so their role was further emphasized. So in this way it was the change. And last but not the least, you can say, in fact, in order to create some sort of cleavage and create some sort of division within Indian army, now the regiments were organized on the basis of caste and region. Rajput regiment, Gorkha regiment, Sikh regiment, etc. It was the British conscious British ploy, conscious British effort or game to divide Indian army. मतलब वो चाहते थे कि हम जाति के आधार पर और क्षेत्र के आधार पर रेजिमेंट बनाएंगे तो आपस में इनमें एकता नहीं होगी। सो इन दिस वे यू कैन से कि दीज आर द मिलिट्री रिफॉर्म्स। देन कम द टर्म्स ऑफ पुलिस रिफॉर्म्स। इफ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर हैड टू बी मेंटेन एफिशिएंटली इन इंडिया, so police also needs some sort of reforms. So you find here कि in course of the police reforms you will come to know that there was the legislation of the Police Act of 1861. Police Act of 1861. Whenever you will observe the Police Act of 1861, so according to this act, the highest officer was Inspector General. Inspector General was the highest officer, and it was at the level of province. Provincial level पर Inspector General का पद IG, short form was IG. Today it is equivalent to DG, Director General, but at that time Inspector General. So it was directly under the state government. Then you can say district. At district level you will call about SP, Superintendent of Police. And then comes the turn of, you know, that is Thana. Level of Thana. I have told you Lord Cornwallis created the modern Thana system. Some of you people have actually selected this Warren Hastings, but Lord Cornwallis, and Thana was placed under the control of an officer Daroga. But what change you find? Thana was remained to be the same, but now the nomenclature of the officer simply changed. Its new name was Sub-Inspector. So in place of Daroga, you will find a name that is called Sub-Inspector. So this is the change, police reforms in 1861, and it was on the basis of Police Act of 1861. And here I have to give you the interesting information. This Police Act of 1861 has continued till today. Even today you can say the central government. So the central government is much enthusiastic for bringing police reforms. But as the police subject is the state subject, so state government does not allow the central government to run smoothly, and as the measure was opposed by the state government, so central government could not bring any major change or any major step in police reforms. मतलब चूंकि ये स्टेट विषय है पुलिस, इसलिए सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट बार बार ट्राई करती है, लेकिन आज भी हमारी जो पुलिस सिस्टम है वो 1861 का पुलिस एक्ट के आधार पर चल रही है। Then comes the turn of, you know, that is civil services reforms. What is the civil services reforms? I have to make you clear. Actually here I have to inform you कि in fact in civil services reforms में the highest post in civil services or highest services under the civil services was called covenant civil service. जैसे सिविल सर्विसेज का जो हाईएस्ट पोजीशन होता था उनको कोवेनांट सिविल सर्विस कहा जाता था, कोवेनांट, एंड द ऑफिसर्स ऑफ द पोस्ट ऑफ द कोवेनांट सिविल सर्विसेज वाज ऑलमोस्ट रिजर्व्ड फॉर British and Europeans. Indians were hardly getting representation. Some adventurous Indians like Satyendranath Tagore might have been selected, should have been selected at that time. It was a matter of chance. So here it was almost it put a check over the entry of you can say Indian intellectuals into this Covenant Civil Services. But after the Great Revolt of 1857, it was bitterly realized even Indians should be given some representation on the higher post, particularly the sons of nobles, Indian nobles, and you can say the Indian gentry should be offered the post of the higher official post like Covenant Civil Services, so that it might have SUS or it might have, you can say, bring Indians into good humor. मतलब उनको ये लगा कि अगर हम थोड़ा सा कुछ हायर स्ट्रेटा के जो हायर एलिट्स हैं, इंडियन एलिट्स में जो इंडियन कुलीन हैं, उनके बच्चों को अगर हम कवेनांट सिविल सर्विसेज जैसे उच्च सेवा में लेते हैं तो थोड़ा, सॉरी कवेनांट सिविल सर्विसेज नहीं, मतलब अगर हायर पोस्ट पर लेते हैं तो थोड़ा सा इंडियंस में एक सेटिस्फैक्शन आएगा और कम से कम हमारे रूल के अगेंस्ट में वो नहीं जाएंगे. तो इन ऑर्डर टू अपीज और एस्वेज द इंडियंस, they preferred to create a new service. Although the cadres who were, you can say, or the officers who were selected on the basis of the service, so they would be offered the equivalent post of the Covenant Civil Services, but the name of service was different. It was statutory civil services. Statutory. So post of statutory civil services was created in order to give representation of some of the Indians. Here I have to inform you. But my friends, in 1882, there was once again the formation of a commission on civil services, and on the basis of the commission, now some initiative was taken for civil services reforms, and at its recommendation in 1887, then this is the Covenant Civil Services, and Covenant Civil Services, the you can say the officers from Covenant Civil Services were, you can say, decorating the higher post, higher position, for example civil servant in the district. But there was one junior service as well, and junior service was on Covenant Civil Service, uncovenant civil services. Here you can say there was the second class officer post, and in second class officer post, the most of the officers were appointed in provinces, and they were working under the Covenant Civil Services. So this uncovenant civil services, the post under uncovenant civil services were offered to Indians. मतलब इंडियंस को अनकवेनांट सिविल सर्विसेज के पोस्ट मिलते थे और ब्रिटिश को कवेनांट सिविल सर्विसेज के. And then statutory civil services was created exclusively to provide the higher post equivalent to Covenant Civil Services to some of the Indians or Indian youths who were coming from the elite family. So this was the provision. But in 1887, a new system was introduced. A new system was the Covenant Civil Services. Its name was changed to Central Service. And Covenant Civil Services, its new name was State Service. And statutory civil services, it was abolished, and in its place there was a provision. It is from state civil services. Some of the officers would be taken into central civil services on the basis of promotion. Means from the state, and this system has continued till today. Even today you find from the state civil services, in home cadre, some of the officers are just, you can say, recruited into the higher services like IS and IPS. The same happens even at that time. So this process started from 1887. So in this way, my students, civil services, but you have not go into the details. Simply keep in your mind, statutory civil services, a new type of civil services were introduced here. Okay, so that is civil services reforms. Then Local Self-Government Act in 1882. Local Self-Government Act was legislated in 1882. You have to find out. हिंदी, माय स्टूडेंट्स, माय हिंदी स्टूडेंट, कॉवेनांट को हिंदी में कॉवेनांट ही लिख देना, ऐसे लिख देना, ऐसे कॉवेनांट. इसकी हिंदी मुश्किल है, सांविधिक है, सांविधिक, एंड सांविधिक विल बी मोर डिफिकल्ट. आई विल सजेस्ट यू बेटर टू यूज द टर्म कॉवेनांट इन Hindi Devanagari script. Somewhere you find difficulty to students who are coming from English medium, but even in English medium, will you write in English or Hindi? I think you will write in English. To write in English, so no problem at all. Covenant का सांविधिक है, लेकिन तुम मतलब covenant ही जानो, because Hindi is too much difficult. It is very difficult to find out the Hindi. स्टेच्यूटरी का हिंदी मुझे भी पता नहीं. हम लोग स्टेट्यूटरी ही लिख देना, शशि, स्टेट्यूटरी ही लिख देना, मतलब लीगल टाइप का कुछ होता है मीनिंग, बट आई एम नॉट क्लियर कि व्हाट इज द एग्जैक्ट हिंदी मीनिंग ऑफ स्टेट्यूटरी सिविल सर्विसेज. क्योंकि जहाँ कहीं भी मैं देखता हूँ ना, तो इवन इन हिंदी दे आर राइटिंग स्टेट्यूटरी सिविल सर्विसेज, बिकॉज दे आर सर्टेन वर्ड्स व्हिच हिंदी इज मोर डिफिकल्ट इवन देन इंग्लिश. फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू विल फाइंड रेडिकल, एंड इन हिंदी में है मूल परिवर्तनवादी. So people prefer to write radical in Devanagari script. So the same happens here also. Khyati, you have possibly you have joined late, because I have already discussed with you, Khyati, the Regulating Act of 1773. Actually, there were three regions at that time. One was Bengal, another was Madras, and third one was Bombay. So the governor, later it was realized that there should be some sort of hierarchy of administration, and Bengal should be given the nucleus place or the central place in the administrative structure. So that's why the governor of Bengal was given the right to supervise the governor of Madras, activities of the governor of Madras and that of Bombay, and governor of Bengal could have, you can say, given some specific instructions to the governor of Madras and that of Bombay. So that's why the status of the governor of Bengal had to be changed now. So the changed status was now Governor General. It became possible on the basis of the Regulating Act of 1773, and it was in this act there was a provision for a 4-member council which could have assisted the Governor General in his functions. मतलब कि एक 4 सदस्यीय परिषद की व्यवस्था की गई, और चूंकि अब गवर्नर, बंगाल का गवर्नर मद्रास और बॉम्बे के गवर्नर का भी सुपरविजन करता था, इसलिए उसका स्टेटस बढ़ाना और नाम को बड़ा करना आवश्यक था. दैट्स व्हाई इट्स नेम वाज चेंज्ड टू गवर्नर जनरल. तो माय स्टूडेंट्स, अब दिस इज द लोकल सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट एक्ट. अब व्हाई लोकल सेल्फ गवर्नमेंट? फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम at local level, the Indians were given the representation in administration. What was the motive behind that? Because I have told you, even if the British took a smile, his smile was having some colonial content and colonial objective. अगर ब्रिटिश भारत में मुस्कुराए भी तो मुस्कुराहट के पीछे कोई न कोई colonial interest था, औपनिवेशिक हित था. तो अब in 1882 they introduced the Local Self-Government Act. What was the reason behind that? So the simple reason was that the local self-government, actually the nationalist leaders at that time, because at that time gradually there was the rise of nationalist consciousness. So a group of nationalist leaders persistently demanded Indians should have been given the representation in administration, and the British were avoiding the representation to Indians. So at least at the local self-government level, they gave some representation in order to appease Indians and in order to bring Indians in good humor or Indian nationalists into good humor. मतलब उन्होंने जानबूझकर लोकल लेवल पर थोड़ा सा इंडियंस को रिप्रेजेंटेशन देकर नेशनलिस्ट जो लोग थे उनको खुश करने की कोशिश की, क्योंकि अपर लेवल पर तो रिप्रेजेंटेशन इंडियंस को दे नहीं सकते थे. तो दैट्स व्हाई दे प्रेफर टू गिव रिप्रेजेंटेशन टू इंडियंस एट लोकल self-government, local level. So that's why they formed local self-government for the first time in 1882. It was not out of generosity It was out of compulsion. That is the point. Okay. So administration is complete now. Here, what is the basic objective behind administrative reforms? The basic objective behind administrative reforms was to strengthen the British grip over India, but the British should not try to antagonize Indians. मतलब ब्रिटिश की कोशिश यह थी कि हम एक तरफ इंडिया पर अपने कंट्रोल को बढ़ाएं, लेकिन इंडियंस को भी हम डिससेटिस्फाई ना करें. तो जस्ट द ब्रिटिश ट्राई टू स्ट्राइक अ मिडल पाथ. So this is the point here. Just 1 minute. This is just like a question, my students. Most of the questions I am just placing you in the written form so that you can save the time here, because I will start dictating answer here, so that will be too much time taking and a bit monotonous for you people. So in order to avoid the situation, I have given here a model answer. You can go through it. After 1858, the basic objective of the administrative reforms brought about the British Crown in India was to prevent the recurrence of an event like the Great Revolt of 1857. Examine the statement. मतलब आपको ये कह रहा है कि 1858 के बाद जो भारत में प्रशासनिक सुधार हुए, उसका बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव यह था कि 1857 के महाविद्रोह जैसी घटना फिर दोबारा ना हो. इस कथन का परीक्षण कीजिए. मतलब आई थिंक यू आर क्लियर कि इनफैक्ट द बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव वाज कि द event like the Great Revolt of 1857 should not be allowed to recur again, to be repeated again. So that's why you can say that certain administrative reforms were carried on. This is the question and you have to examine it. So how to start? The year 1858 marked the beginning of a new era of British rule in India. In 1858, the British Crown took the control of administration of India and also inducted many administrative reforms in India. But on close observation, we realized that these were only superficial in nature, while basic objective remained the same. So that is your thesis statement. What I am just telling you, thesis. Even in course of writing, you can underline the important words or phrases you are using. That is the sign of an standard writing. You can do this thing. For the administration of India, the Office of Secretary of State of India was created, and to assist him, a council of 15 member was also constituted. However, the post of Governor General of India and Governor in provinces continued to exist, but the Governor General of India was now called the Viceroy. Then, on the basis of the Act of 1861, legislative decentralization was initiated, and later the financial decentralization was also encouraged, but Indians were not allowed to participate. Indians were not allowed. Moreover, initiatives were also taken for military and police reforms, but the objective was to maintain a strict control over India. Similarly, reforms in the civil services or in local government were initiated just to pacify the Indian nationalists. This one. In the end, we can conclude that all the reforms carried out by the British Crown were superficial in nature, and their major objective was to establish a strict control over India without giving birth to any discontent among the masses. मतलब इन सम टोटल इस क्वेश्चन में आपको कहा जा रहा है कि उन्होंने जितने भी रिफॉर्म्स किए, उस रिफॉर्म्स का ऑब्जेक्टिव कहीं ना कहीं उद्देश्य यह था कि हम भारत पर अपना नियंत्रण को मजबूत बनाएं और साथ ही हम इंडियंस को असंतुष्ट ना करें, डिससेटिस्फाइड ना करें. यही उनके जो बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव है. और माय स्टूडेंट, इवन दोज हु आर कमिंग फ्रॉम इंग्लिश, वो भी राइटिंग तो आप लोग इंग्लिश में ही करोगे ना, हिंदी में तो नहीं करोगे. इसलिए इंग्लिश को फॉलो करो, कुछ इंग्लिश टर्म्स को इन कोर्स ऑफ राइटिंग, एंड डू द प्रैक्टिस वर्क, particularly those students who are coming from English. So I am just requesting you people, you have to do the regular practice work of writing, because that will makes you perfect in writing. अब इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी, just my student, in economic policy you have to discuss about three measures. Gaurav, it is not an independent phenomena. This phenomena is basically question writing is not coming from any vacuum, but question itself is giving a direction to what to write and how to write. So that's why, my students, I have always imparted you the method of writing. I always believes, because you people are doing and performing very well in the multiple choice question like MCQ. I have been confident about you in MCQ now. Now my total objective is to strengthen you and to upgrade you in subjective question writing like means question writing or descriptive question writing, you can say. So my whole objective is towards that, because in multiple choice question I have almost been confident you people have acquired the acumen how to make a logic while selecting the choices like ABCD. अब मुझे ये डर नहीं रहा कि तुम मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चन में, चूंकि तुम बड़ा करेक्ट लॉजिक लगाते हो, because I have put so many difficult questions as well and you have easily responded to the demand of the question. तो अब जो मेंस का क्वेश्चन है, मेंस के क्वेश्चन में एक बात ध्यान रखना है कि आंसर हमारा वैक्यूम से नहीं आता है. जो क्वेश्चन होता है उस क्वेश्चन में ही आंसर का डायरेक्शन होता है. तो पहले क्वेश्चन को राइटिंग करने से पहले उसके जो कीवर्ड्स हैं, कीवर्ड्स कहते हैं मुख्य शब्दावली को, उसको पकड़ना पड़ता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आई एम गिविंग द एग्जाम्पल. Suppose you will find the question, are you mentally alert? All of you, please, because you are not just in front of you, but I am visualizing you are in front of me. You will find a question, the proclamation of Queen Victoria on 1st November 1858 changed the relationship between the British Crown and Indian states. Elaborate the statement with certain examples. तो जैसे 1 नवंबर 1858 को जो क्वीन विक्टोरिया की उद्घोषणा आई, उसने भारतीय राज्य और ब्रिटिश क्राउन के संबंधों को परिवर्तित किया. इस कथन को उदाहरण समेत स्पष्ट कीजिए. तो माय स्टूडेंट, आई विल ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट कि व्हाट इज द बेसिक डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन. आई विल कम टू द कंक्लूजन कि इट इज बेसिकली अ हाइपोथेटिकल क्वेश्चन. एक हाइपोथेटिकल क्वेश्चन है. हाइपोथेटिकल क्वेश्चन की खासियत होती है कि जो स्टेटमेंट वो देते हैं उसे हमें स्मार्टली प्रूव करना होता है. उसमें हम कुछ आइडियाज देना है, कुछ एग्जाम्पल्स देने हैं और वी हैव टू डेवलप द आंसर. तो उसमें हमारा बहुत ही ऑब्जेक्टिव लिमिटेड हो जाता है. उसमें हमको उसी स्टेटमेंट को प्रूव करना पड़ता है. अब चाहे एनालाइज लिखें, एक्सप्लेन लिखें या थ्रो लाइट ऑन लिखें, सबका लगभग मीनिंग एक ही तरह का निकल जाता है. द मीनिंग इज ऑलमोस्ट द सेम. But my students, you are just moving the question in the same question. So here you will just write, yes, it changed the in the Queen's proclamation changed the relationship. It has made such a declaration that it discarded the policy of annexation and gave the promise कि old ये in this way just try to bring the Indian states in the good humor. Although objective remained to be the colonial objective remained at the same, but at least behavior was going to completely change. वहां तुम्हारी पूरी कोशिश यही सिद्ध करने पर है कि हाँ चेंज हुआ, और तुम बिहेवियर की बात करोगे, ऑब्जेक्टिव की बात ही नहीं करोगे, ऑब्जेक्टिव की तरफ हिंट देकर छोड़ दोगे. बट सपोज इन द सेकेंड वन क्वेश्चन, द सेम स्टेटमेंट, दे आर गोइंग टू यूज अ न्यू डायरेक्टरी. क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन द स्टेटमेंट और डू यू एग्री विद द स्टेटमेंट और डिस्कस द स्टेटमेंट. इन दैट केस you have to give a hint toward the second one phenomena. तब तुम्हारे लिए सेकेंड वन phenomena इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाएगी. देखो भाई, जो चेंज हो रहा है वो महज सुपरफिशियल है. जो एक्चुअल ऑब्जेक्टिव है और जो उनका एक्चुअल ट्रीटमेंट है, एक्चुअल ऑब्जेक्टिव है, वो नहीं चेंज कर रहा. तो वहां पर तुम्हारा पूरा इंफेसिस ही बदल जाएगा. तो गौरव, इसलिए हम इंडिपेंडेंटली तुम्हें क्या बताएं, फॉलो द क्वेश्चन, ट्राई टू फाइंड आउट द कीवर्ड्स एंड ट्राई टू डेवलप द आंसर. That will help you a lot, and the whole process is a bit time consuming. So you need to have the patience for that. Okay, is Gaurav clear? Agriculture. Then the second one is phenomena of home charges and drain of wealth. And third one is rise of modern industries. Okay, my students, in field of agriculture we are nothing, we have not to say anything substantial, because in the field of agriculture I have to simply inform you, earlier than before, as under the company's rule, there were three types of land revenue system. One was permanent settlement, second one Rayatwari, and third one Mahalwari. Even under the British Crown, the old system of land revenue, the old model of land revenue system existed. Means ki in the same area, for example, permanent settlement remained to be there, Rayatwari and Mahalwari. The British Crown didn't bring any change in that. But the second one question was ki gradually up to this period, because you have started this financial phase, so it has started from 1858 and it had to continue up to 1947. You already know the fact that up to the end of 19th century there was the rise of modern nationalism, and some modern nationalist leaders became active, and they had been demanding persistently for agrarian reforms. The one of the, you can say, tormenting thing was the protection, you can say, that is the phenomena of famine, because the nationalist scholars were putting a question mark to the British policy. If the British policy resulted into the recurring incidents of famine, so the British would form some commission. It has to inquire about the poverty, growing incidence of poverty and famine in India, and it had to try to remove the situation. So my students, actually in 1877-78 there was a great famine which visited India, central India and Deccan. मतलब 1877 और 78 में सेंट्रल इंडिया और डेक्कन में एक भयंकर अकाल पड़ा, and this period was the period of Lord Lytton. So after this famine, then the government took a drastic step for the formation of a commission, and the name of the commission was Strachey Commission. The name was Strachey Commission. And in Strachey Commission you will come to know that this commission gave some recommendation for the famine relief. So on this basis, in 1883 you can say that there was the formation of a famine code, that is called famine code. and इसके बाद एक फेमाइन कोड बना, उसको अकाल संहिता बोलते थे. So according to the famine code, if there would be the failure of crops to the proportion of 3/4 of the total crops, so in that case the government would waive off the amount of land revenue. मतलब अगर फसल 3/4 नष्ट हो जाएगी तो सरकार भू राजस्व को माफ कर देगी. This was the provision. If 3/4 crops would be destroyed, in that case the government would waive off the land revenue amount. But in actual sense, it was a very difficult task to prove, particularly by peasants, because in case of famine, the peasants were making the claim that 3/4 crops have been destroyed, but the government was not going to accept this, and the government was persistently giving reply that no, you are still having a lot of crops, so there is not the failure of 3/4 crops. So even to take concession of a waiver of land revenue, the peasants had to fight against the government time and again. Later you will come to know that Gandhi had to organize the Khera Satyagraha in 1918 in order to prove that due to famine, the crops have been destroyed in Khera district of Gujarat. तो मतलब ये कहने के लिए तो फेमाइन कोड था, लेकिन उसका फायदा बहुत नहीं हो पाता था, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट रिकॉग्नाइज ही नहीं करती थी कि 3/4 क्रॉप डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया है. तो दिस वॉज द बेसिक प्रॉब्लम. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, बट माई स्टूडेंट्स, हियर आई हैव टू inform you, as British Crown at least changed the behavior towards Indian. So British Crown always try to project the fact that the Crown is in actual sense the माई बाप of India and Indians. जो ब्रिटिश क्राउन है वो इंडियंस के माई बाप हैं एंड वेल विशर्स है और सिंपैथाइजर्स हैं. इसलिए वो क्या करते थे कि इंडियन जो टेनेंट्स हैं, पीजेंट्री हैं, उनको प्रोटेक्शन देने के लिए उन्होंने कुछ लेजिस्लेशन लाया, कुछ एक्ट लाया. In order to give protection to Indian peasantry and tenants, you can say tenants कहते हैं रैयत को, रैयत किसान. तो in order to give protection to tenants, the government introduced so many tenancy act. For example, you can say कि just after the Great Revolt of 1857 and learning the lesson from the revolts of the peasants of Awadh, then the government took a drastic step for introducing Bengal Tenancy Act of 1859. Because here, my students, I have told you earlier, if whatever amount of revenue or the rent or whatever amount of revenue the jamindar or the landlord was liable to pay to the government, it was fixed and it became permanent, or it was fixed permanently in 1793 itself. So the government could not enhance the rate of the jamindars. But the peasants were not given such a safety. The jamindars could have enhanced the rate on land revenue on peasantry from time and again. So right from the 1793 up to 1859, there was the 7 times increasement in the rate of land revenue on peasants. So government tried to put some curve on the arbitrary enhancement by the jamindars on the basis of Tenancy Act of 1859. मतलब कि क्योंकि जमींदार मनमाने ढंग से किसानों पर अपना टैक्स बढ़ा देते थे, तो गवर्नमेंट ने एक ड्रास्टिक स्टेप लिया और 1859 के बंगाल टेनेंसी एक्ट में, उसको रैयतवारी कानून बोलते हैं, ताकि मनमाने ढंग से जमींदार अपने टैक्स को, लैंड रेवेन्यू को, यानी भू राजस्व को बढ़ा न सके. So the first act here I have to inform you, so that is, you can say, Bengal Tenancy Act of 1859. And then you can say Bengal Tenancy Act of 1885. In 1885, another law was, and another act was legislated again in 1885. But my students, you will be surprised to know that when Bengal Tenancy Act of 1885 was being accepted or legislated, to in that case, on that occasion, it was the nationalist leaders from the Indian National Congress, the moderate leaders, who opposed the government move on the behalf of jamindars. So it is really a matter of surprise if sometime the British tried to project themselves as the well-wishers of Indian peasants, and they were putting the Congress leaders into the dock. Basically, the Congress leaders are not the sympathizer of peasants, but rather the sympathizer of landlords. It is due to the fact. तो एक बहुत बड़ा कारण है माय स्टूडेंट्स कि इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस में गांधी से पहले पीजेंट्स का सपोर्ट इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस को नहीं मिल पाता था. एंड यू विल फाइंड अ वेरी स्पेशल कंडीशन ऑफ जमींदार्स इन स्पेशल कंडीशन ऑफ बंगाल. इन बंगाल there was the Hindu landlords and majority of peasants were Muslims. And Congress, most of the Congress leaders who were coming from Bengals, almost all of the Congress leaders, you can say, right from the time of Rabindranath Tagore to Subhash Chandra Bose, all were the landlords. So here you know the Congress leaders never supported the progressive agrarian reforms in Bengal ever. And it became the one of the factors, the Congress could never win the elections in Bengal in whole of its career, I will discuss with you later in the part of the national movement. So this Bengal Tenancy Act in 1885. Then you can say, one incident you will find, I will give you the example that you might have heard about, an act that is called Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act. Relief Act 1879. Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act. Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act 1879. What does it mean? Now here you are supposed to observe this act. Actually, what happened in Deccan? Earlier I have asked you a question in prelims and you people have just given the very rightful choice to me, but once again I am repeating this question. If someone is going to ask you ki the problem of rural indebtedness means Gramin Ringrasata, that you can say the specter of or the challenge of or the problem of rural indebtedness appear to be most formidable in which of the regions? Twice A, Jamindari and permanent settlement region, Retwari region and Mahalwari region. So what choice you will like? Ankur asked my students, if someone is going to ask you if this problem of rural indebtedness was the most acute problem in which region? Permanent settlement, Retwari or Mahalwari? Be fast. Please answer my question. Be fast. What is the situation? Yes, Retwari. So my point is ki Deccan means in Maharashtra. So in Deccan you will come to know actually peasants had to suffer a lot. In Deccan the peasants had to suffer a lot because in Deccan you can say basically Deccan peasants of Deccan were just producing cotton. मतलब Deccan के जो किसान थे वो कपास का उत्पादन करते थे. And they used to export the cotton, and cotton was in heavy demand in Europe, particularly at the time of American War of Independence. There was the outbreak of American, or you can say American War of Independence erupted between 1861 to 65. 1861-65 के भी जब अमेरिकन वॉर ऑफ अमेरिकन सिविल वॉर स्टार्ट हुआ, उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये हुआ कि जो अमेरिकन सप्लाई था वो चौक हो गया. अब द अमेरिकन सप्लाई वाज डिसरप्टेड, so it was compensated by supply from Deccan. So peasants of Deccan earned some money. But in 1865, once the Civil War ended, so once again the American cotton and the supply from American cotton was resumed. So there was the heavy decline in the demand from the Deccan cotton. This led towards depression in Deccan region. In the meantime, the government enhanced the rate of land revenue, so the peasants in Deccan were heavily indebted. And out of frustration, they started to attack the house of money lenders. So it took the form of a popular movement in Deccan in 1870s that is called the Deccan Riots, Deccan Ke Dange. So finally, the government has to bring the Deccan Relief Act 1879. In this way, my students, the government took some measures to give protection to peasantry. So I have to simply mention about the provision of peasantry here and to this in agriculture here. And finally, here I have mentioned about the Punjab Land Alienation Act of 1900. Punjab region was the Mahalwari region. There you can say the peasants were indebted to money lenders. Money lenders were Hindus. That was called the Mahajans. So as the one of the act, you can say Punjab Land Alienation Act. So Punjab Land Alienation Act, the time period is 1900 or 1899 to 1900. So there in Punjab, you can say the peasants were indebted to money lenders, and the money lenders were seizing their land. They were basically the transfer of land from agriculturist to non-agriculturist in Punjab. So British government introduced an act, Punjab Land Alienation Act, and on the basis of this act, the transfer of land from peasants to non-peasantry was restricted. There was a restriction over the transfer of land. And surprisingly, even at that time, the Congress opposed the move on the behalf of the money lenders of Punjab. अब यहाँ पर भी मॉडरेट लीडर्स को आप देखिए, भाई गवर्नमेंट एक्ट बना रही है पीजेंट्स के प्रोटेक्शन के लिए, और कांग्रेस ने मनी लेंडर्स का साथ देते हुए गवर्नमेंट के इस एक्ट को अपोज किया. अब बताइए ऐसे में कॉमन इंडियंस कांग्रेस के लीडर्स को अपना लीडर्स कैसे मानते? So it was going to be an important question. Anyway, this was the field of agriculture. Ankur, everything is okay? Right. Up now, after agriculture, you are supposed to talk about the home charges. I have discussed about the home charges. Of what is the home charges? A phenomena of home charges and drain of wealth. My students, this is a conceptual topic, so you have to be mentally alert now. Home charges. What is the home charges? Amount, annual amount transferred from, या इसको मैं ऐसे करता हूं, I am making you a broad-based ideas. Influx of British capital. Influx of British capital to India. Influx of British capital to India. Investment. Profit. Debt or loan. Interest. Annual transfer of a part of principal money and interest is known as was known as home charges. My students, be clear, be mentally alert and be crystal clear. Take the influx of money from Britain to India. Okay. So after 1858, there was the accumulation of capital in Britain, and in Britain, India was declared to be a very favorable destination for the British capital. So British capital was coming to India in two forms. One form was the loan. So Indian government was taking the loan. Even 5% guaranteed, the provision of 5% guaranteed profit on railways. It also took the form of a loan, which India needed to make a repayment. And likewise, you can say the third factor is, for example, the there was military, there were military purchases for Indian soldiers in Britain, and this amount was placed on Indian exchequer. मतलब एक तो गवर्नमेंट को कर्ज देते थे वो अमाउंट, प्लस रेलवे पर उन्होंने जो लोन दिया हुआ था वह अमाउंट, प्लस जो हमारे जो आर्मी थे, सोल्जर्स थे, उनके जो मिलिट्री गुड्स परचेज होते थे लंदन में, वह अमाउंट हमारे अकाउंट पर डाल देते थे। उसके अलावा बहुत था, सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट का ऑफिस का एक्सपेंडिचर था, वो भी हमारे ही एक्सचेकर पर था। फिर इसके अलावा जो रिटायर्ड ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स हु रिटर्न टू लंदन, the amount of pension was transferred from India to Britain. It was also some sort of liability for Indian government, just like the loan. So my students, every year the Indian government used to transfer a certain amount of money from India to Britain, which was given either to British government or private British capitalist as repayment. It was just like the yearly EMI. If today you take the loan, you are making payment of monthly EMI. This was yearly EMI, and this yearly EMI was what? That is home charges. It is called home charges. Okay. So you will find here the term home charges. So my students, in home charges there were the four major constituents. One was the guaranteed profit on railways, which India was to make a yearly repayment. Second one, government loan. Third one, the amount of military purchases, which was just like the loan on India, and the military purchases which was done for Indian soldiers in Britain. And fourth one, the amount of pension which was transferred from India to Britain. So that is called home charges. Okay. Investment is different. Investment, they were making investment in shipping industry, the tea and coffee gardens, you can say banking, bima, etc. And then this making the investment, it is not our liability. They were making the investment. The Indian government used to give support to him and helping him to making investment and to making profit in India. And this profit was transferred from private channel. It was not through government channel. So it was not home charges. Home charges was simply an amount which was being transferred from government channel. मतलब जो गवर्नमेंट टू गवर्नमेंट ट्रांसफर होगा माय स्टूडेंट्स, वो होम चार्जेज होगा। अब मान लो कोई प्राइवेट कैपिटलिस्ट यहाँ इन्वेस्टमेंट करता है और इन्वेस्टमेंट करके अपना पैसा प्रॉफिट के रूप में ले जाता है, तो उनका प्रॉफिट है वो प्राइवेट चैनल से ले जा रहे हैं, वो हमारे गवर्नमेंट की लायबिलिटी नहीं है, तो वो होम चार्जेज नहीं है। तो आई थिंक माय स्टूडेंट्स, आर यू क्लियर कि व्हाट वर द होम चार्जेज? ओके। अब माय स्टूडेंट्स, this is a matter of controversy or a debatable issue, because Dadabhai Naoroji, who was a moderate leader in India, and he was also an economic expert, and he basically, as an economic expert, he made an assessment of the home charges and its impact, and he propounded his famous drain theory, drain of wealth from India to Britain. And it was in this context that Dadabhai Naoroji tried to prove that the amount which was the total amount which was being transferred from India to Britain in the form of home charges, that was the economic drain from India to Britain. उन्होंने कहा कि देखो, जो भी अमाउंट इंडिया से लंदन को ट्रांसफर हो रहा है वह अमाउंट एक तरह से ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ है. देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी डाउट इन दिस रिगार्ड. On the other hand, the British scholars Morrison is making the claim कि no, it is a wrong statement. In fact, this amount which India was liable to pay in the form of home charges, so that was genuinely spent over the development of India. For example, the development of railways, telegraph, roads, canals, etc. So that is not the amount of drain. Dadabhai Naoroji gave the argument. Dadabhai Naoroji, 3 arguments I have just stated in my study material. You people might go through it. दादाभाई नौरोजी ने 3 बातें कही. एक उन्होंने कहा, पहला कि वी नीडेड नॉट इन्वेस्टमेंट इन रेलवेज. रेलवे हमारी जरूरत नहीं थी. वी नीडेड इरिगेशन प्रोजेक्ट्स बिकॉज एग्रीकल्चर वाज आवर प्राइमरी सेक्टर एंड वी वर इन नीड ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इरिगेशन but British preferred investment in railways for its own purpose. So for Indians it was drain. भाई आपने फिजूल खर्ची किया, आपने रेलवे में खर्च किया, हमें जरूरत नहीं थी, हमें तो सिंचाई चाहिए था, इरिगेशन चाहिए था. That is the first argument. Second argument was that if there might have been a Indianization of civil services, then there was no need of transfer of pension money from India to Britain, because there could have been the Indian officers after retirement, the amount could have remained in India because the retired officers were taking the amount of pension in India itself. So there was no question of transferring the money from India to London. उनका कहना था कि अगर सिविल सेवा का भारतीयकरण कर दिया जाता और इंडियन ऑफिसर्स को आप लेते तो क्यों यहां से पेंशन भेजना होता. एंड थर्ड वन फैक्टर वाज the amount which British brought as the loan or investment, it was not any fresh amount. It was the previous amount which had been carried from India to Britain previously, and the same amount returned again in the form of loan, and after taking interest it is returning. मतलब जो अमाउंट आप लाए वो अमाउंट कोई नया अमाउंट नहीं था, वो हमारे यहाँ से पहले आप चुरा के ले जा चुके थे, फिर दोबारा लाए और उस पर फिर इंटरेस्ट लेकर फिर ले जा रहे हैं. तो हाउ मेनी टाइम्स विल एक्सप्लॉइट अस. So this was the basic argument given by दादा भाई नौरोजी. तो ये तीन आर्गुमेंट है. मॉरिसन ने कहा कि नो यू आर रॉन्ग, दिस अमाउंट वाज जेन्युइनली स्पेंट ओवर द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. अब माय स्टूडेंट्स, यू कैन आस्क मी द क्वेश्चन, what stand you people have to take now? A stand is taken. The whole amount of home charges was not the economic drain, because at least some amount was spent over the development of India as well. From some of the amount, India was also benefited, and we were also benefited to certain extent. So it was not the total drain, but it is true a major amount of home charges was an economic drain. So my students, up here I am making this one. A major amount of home charges. A major amount of home charges मतलब अब इकोनॉमिक ड्रेन. आर यू क्लियर? मतलब मैंने आपको यह कहा कि देखो, जो टोटल अमाउंट यहां से लंदन ट्रांसफर किया गया उस सभी को ड्रेन मत मानिए, धन की निकासी मत कहिए, क्योंकि कुछ तो इससे इंडिया को फायदा हुआ, लेकिन इसका जो एक मेजर अमाउंट है उसको आप इकोनॉमिक ड्रेन जरूर मानिए. तो मेजर अमाउंट फ्रॉम द होम चार्जेज वाज एन इकोनॉमिक ड्रेन. यही तय हो गया. For example, what is the proportion? We cannot make that clear. Let it remain to be vague. What is that amount? But a major amount. But my students, so far the question of drain of wealth is concerned, so a major amount of home charges was economic drain, but it was not simply the home charges that was drain. Dadabhai Naoroji possibly made a miscalculation. He simply focused on transfer of money from government to government, but he ignored the transfer of money from the private channel. Ignored the transfer of money from private channel. So here I have to inform you कि take another example as well. In fact, even some other items should be added in economic drain. Other item is profit by private British merchants. Profit by private British merchants was also an economic drain. You can ask me the question ki how was profit by private British merchants was drained? Because they invested, they are taking the profit, all are going in a legal process. No. In fact, the Indian government favored them to take the profit. opportunities were not open to capitalists from all over the world. Simply British capitalists were given the priority for making investment in India. So there was the distorted business rule in favor of British capitalists. The rules were being distorted to maximize their profit. तो पूरा जो गवर्नमेंट मशीनरी इंडिया का है वो उनको फेवर कर रही है कि आप ज्यादा से ज्यादा प्रॉफिट लेके जाइए. So my students, in that case, it is drain because their profit was not a genuine profit, it was manipulated profit. And third one factor was a part of the salary of British officers. ब्रिटिश ऑफिसर्स का जो सैलरी का एक पार्ट है वह भी इकोनॉमिक ड्रेन था. इन व्हाट वे? So my point is the Indian civil services were the highly paid services in the world. They were not appointing Indians on the post. If the Indians could have been appointed on the post, the whole amount could have remained in India. But British officers who had been working in India and they were drawing the higher salaries and they were not spending all the money in India itself. If they didn't spend the money in India itself, and they spent a part of money in India, but a part was saved by them, and after saving by them, the money was transferred to London. So this amount was drained. मतलब दादा भाई नौरोजी तो इस पर नहीं बोलते हैं. दादा भाई नौरोजी केवल होम चार्जेज के बारे में बोलते हैं. ये नॉलेज ही उनको नहीं है. बाद के इकोनॉमिस्ट ने खोला कि भाई देखो दादा भाई नौरोजी को इसको भी काउंट करना चाहिए, इसको भी काउंट करना चाहिए, ये भी तो ड्रेन है. अब एक सैलरी का पार्ट जो खर्च कर देते इंडिया में वो ड्रेन नहीं है, लेकिन जो यहां से सेव करके लंदन भेजते हैं वो ड्रेन है, क्योंकि हमारे देश से बाहर जा रहा है. 3 items. So in sum total, a major part of home charges were drained. The private profit of the British merchants in India was a drain which was being transferred to London, and a part of the salary of the British officers was drained because it was transferred from India to London. So in this way it was drained. Then you were informed that in 1870s, there was natural devaluation of Indian rupees in relation to pound sterling, because pound was gold based and Indian rupee was silver based. मतलब उनका जो पाउंड होता था उस सोने पर, स्वर्ण मान पर आधारित था, और जो इंडियन रूपी था वो सिल्वर से उसका रिलेशन था. तो इन वर्ल्ड वाइड देयर वाज द स्कार्सिटी ऑफ गोल्ड. पूरे दुनिया में गोल्ड की स्कार्सिटी हो गई, तो सिल्वर का जो कॉस्ट है वो गोल्ड की तुलना में कम हो गया. मीन्स की इनफैक्ट द कॉस्ट ऑफ सिल्वर डिक्लाइंड इन रिलेशन टू गोल्ड. तो इन दैट केस यू कैन से कि अब इनफैक्ट नेचुरली rupee was devalued in relation to pound. So actual amount of drain increased further. Why? So you are supposed to recall some rules of economics. Economics के rules को आपको याद रखना है. Actually हुआ ऐसा, for example, if earlier there was the 1 pound is equal to 10 rupees, and we are just paying the amount of home charges, we are paying the amount of home charges in the form of dollar, sorry, in the form of pound, not dollar, pound, mistakenly I have told you dollar. We were paying the amount of home charges on the basis of, through pound. So through pound, so we used to purchase the pound with support of Indian rupees. Do you understand? So question arises, if earlier the 1 pound was 10 rupees, but after devaluation 1 pound was 15 rupees. So problem was that earlier for 1 lakh pound you were liable to pay 1 lakh pound. Suppose home charges was in 1 lakh pound, we were liable to pay 10 lakh. we were liable to arrange 10 lakh rupees for purchasing 1 lakh pound. But now for purchasing 1 lakh pound, we required to, you can say, manage 15 lakhs rupees. मतलब मैं रिपीट कर रहा हूं आपको, जैसे पहले 1 लाख पाउंड हमको अगर परचेज करना होता, लेना होता, तो हमको 10 लाख सोल्जर्स लगता, 10 लाख रुपीज लगता, क्योंकि 1 लाख पाउंड 10 रुपीज के बराबर था. अब उसका डिवोल्यूशन के बाद 15 रुपीज हो गया, तो हमको 15 लाख रुपीज खर्च होगा 1 लाख पाउंड के लिए. तो एक्चुअल अमाउंट ऑफ ड्रेन इंक्रीज फर्दर. तो इन दिस वे माय स्टूडेंट्स, देयर वाज द क्वेश्चन ऑफ ड्रेन ऑफ वेल्थ. बट द व्यू ऑफ Dadabhai Naoroji was having certain limitations which I have mentioned in my study material, but today the time is over, so I have to stop here. Some part has remained. This part will take half an hour more, and after half an hour then I will start nationalism in the next one class on Monday. So my students, I will provide you in advance as earlier the study material on nationalism first, and then firstly I will finish this topic, whatever the question we have to, because after all you can say you people have to go through this matter, economic policy, agriculture, you have to go through. I will just make you clear about the diagram next day. And debate regarding home charges I have discussed already with you. This part has explained the limitations of Dadabhai Naoroji views. This 1, 2 and 3 I will discuss in the next one class. And then emergence of modern industries in India, I will talk about the brief introduction, the growth of industrialization in India, and after that this was the question, one question, this was the second one question you people have to go through at your own, and then impact of the First World War, Second World War, and explain how did the revolt of 1812 prove to be a landmark event in conduct of the British policy towards India. This question was in 2016 UPSC already asked this question. And then this one, social policy very brief, and cultural policy very brief, so no problem at all. So on Monday I'll just take your class, and I will provide you the material in advance. Or Mr. Ankur, what is the situation? Okay, so now I have to stop here, my students. I'll see you